Hey everybody, welcome to the Still Being Made podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be talking about Luke 5. I've really been meditating on these scriptures lately, and the Lord has even given me some personal revelation through the text, and so I want to share that with you all. So I'm super excited to just jump right in and talk about the word. So I have my Bible here. I'm just going to read Luke chapter 5, verse 1 through 11, just for context, and then we'll jump right in. So, and I'm in the NLT version. So Luke 5. One day, as Jesus was preaching on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, great crowds pressed in on him to listen to the word of God. He noticed two empty boats at the water's edge, for the fishermen had left them and were washing their nets. Stepping into one of the boats, Jesus asked Simon, its owner, to push it out into the water. So he sat in the boat and taught the crowds from there. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Now go out where it is deeper and let down your nets to catch some fish." "Master," Simon replied, "we worked hard all last night and didn't catch a thing. But if you say so, I'll let the nets down again." And this time their nets were so full of fish they began to tear. A shout for help brought their partners in the other boat, and soon both boats were filled with fish and on the verge of sinking. When Simon Peter realized what had happened, he fell to his knees before Jesus and said, "Oh Lord, please leave me. I'm such a sinful man." For he was awestruck by the number of fish they had caught, as were the others with him. His partners, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, were also amazed. Jesus replied to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you'll be fishing for people." And as soon as they landed, they left everything and followed Jesus. That story is just so good. Like, that story is just so good. Every time I read it, I smile. And I think, like, from a superficial, like, glance at the text or a light reading of it, you will think, it's just a story about, catching a miraculous amount of fish and God's abundance. But it's so much deeper than that when you break the text down. After reading this, like, the first thing that jumped out at me was in verse 5, where Jesus tells Simon to go out to the deeper waters and let down his nets to catch some fish. And then he replied, "We worked hard all last night and didn't catch a thing." And I was just reflecting back onto my own life. Like, there has been so many seasons where I feel like I have worked hard in a particular area of my life and I bear no fruit. And I just related to him in that verse because you could really relate to his frustration and to his exhaustion, and it really symbolized the how we're always striving for something, and that disappointment when you're working so hard, you're striving towards a goal, you're putting in everything that you have, and you're exhausted, you're depleted, you're tired, you're frustrated, and you're still coming out with no result. So for Jesus to say that to him, like, I know if that was me, I'd be like, "Yo, we've been out here all night, not a few hours, like all night trying to do this, and we're coming up short." And so I just related to how they must have been feeling, in that moment when Jesus instructed them to go back out into deeper waters and put down their nets again. And it really does show them like reaching the limits of their own strength. And I think like that is relatable for a lot of us, and I know myself in a lot of ways. Welcome back to the Still Being Made podcast. My name is Jalen, and today we're going to be talking about or reading through the first portion of Luke 5. I was in Luke, and it was just like the Lord was just revealing so many things to me, giving me so many like personal revelations. And so I'm really excited to just break down the text and share what the Lord has been speaking to me about. I got my Bible, I got my iPad, so I'm ready to just jump right in. So when I was reading this text, the thing that the Lord started to speak to me about was how Peter was out there working all night and was coming up short, coming up empty. And when Jesus asked him to go and, go back out into deeper water and to put back out your nets, he explained, he was like, we've been out here all night. He said, we worked hard all last night and didn't catch a thing. But if you say so, I'll let the nets down again. And that really stood out to me because empty nets doesn't mean that it's an empty season. And God doesn't waste anything. And there's so many areas in my life that I can reflect back on where I felt so exhausted, so tired of striving, so tired of like literally working so hard and then like getting to the end of like my own human strength and just feeling depleted and frustrated. And I think that's exactly how Peter was feeling, when he responded that way to Jesus. And for me, like a big thing for me is like my career, and me going to college. Like I have a lot of regrets, and there's a lot of disappointment. There's a little bit of shame, just because I feel like I didn't steward that season of my life well. And for years after that, up until this point currently, I'm still paying the consequences of that. And I feel sometimes I get angry because I'm like, Lord, what was the purpose of that season? What was the purpose of that season? And I feel like I wasted, years of my life that I don't see the fruit from, and I'm sure that there's things in your life that you feel like have been wasted. Maybe that's just like uncertainty in your career, because I know that like that's a big one for me. Like, I went to a 4-year college, did well, but didn't use my degree at all, and got into a whole bunch of debt for it, which I regret, and I'm still, paying literally, the consequences of that. And for me personally, it just wasn't a wise move or decision. But back then, I didn't have the relationship with the Lord that I have with him now. So even stepping into that, I wasn't even consulting him. That was more so a desire of my flesh, because I wanted the experience, and I paid for the experience. It was a very expensive experience. Like, I'm sure a lot of you may agree with me. It was a very expensive experience. And I don't want to get too off track, but like, yeah, career uncertainty or delayed dreams, visions and desires that you had for yourself, but you feel like it's just not working out and you're not seeing the fruit of it. Wanting to, be a business owner or trying your hand at entrepreneurship, and then you just keep failing, or you keep hitting walls, or you keep coming up short, or, your work isn't making a profit. And it's just like, that really just spoke to me of like all these areas in our lives that we feel like we wasted. But as you see, like, God can redeem, God can restore, God will bring life into any area of your life if you trust him enough, if you have faith that he will, and if we act with obedience. Which also brings me to, the next point. Like, even despite Peter feeling stuck, right? With like coming up short all night, he responded to God, or to Jesus, by saying, but if you say so, I'll let the nets down again. And that was him taking an action of obedience and not leaning on his own understanding based off of the circumstances that he was in. And he still obeyed the instructions of God. And then, because we know what happened in the rest of the story, he bared so much fish that he didn't even have, it was overflowing to the point where he couldn't even contain it. Like, it says the nets were tearing. There was so much fish, there was so much abundance that the boat started sinking. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, talk about your cup overflowing, But he would have never experienced that if he didn't obey what Jesus had said, despite how he felt, despite feeling, frustrated and exhausted and just tired, or maybe overwhelmed or angry. Like, no matter how he felt, he still responded in obedience to Jesus. And I think that's important for us, to not get so stuck in our circumstances, and to realize that God, he is always with us. Like, you may feel that he's far away, but I'm telling you, he's in the vicinity. And just because, you feel like you're stuck, or you feel like your prayers are not getting answered, or your dreams and desires are being delayed, like, God is close by, and he's going to use that. He's going to use that. And that's something that I have been working on, even in my own life story. Like, not letting go and like releasing my own like negative emotions about certain seasons in my life, and just inviting Jesus into that space and trusting that there is a purpose for that. He can redeem that. He can restore that. And that there's freedom for me in that area. And so for me and my story, and like my college experience, like, just because there's no like results, I guess, that like you can see, doesn't mean that God is not active in that situation. And that could be a very difficult thing to like understand, but I would rather believe and trust God that he is able to redeem what I feel is an empty season, versus staying stuck in this like heaviness of emotions, and even like vindication. Like, I feel like I have to keep striving, and I have to keep working, and I have to keep, like toiling to make that season of my life worth it. And as I was in prayer and reading this, the Lord was like, vindication is mine, meaning vindication is his, not me. Like I'm putting unnecessary work on myself when Jesus, like God just wants me to invite him into that area, and he's gonna do the heavy lifting. And so even knowing that was like really freeing for me, emotionally, and it helped me to kind of like relax. Like it helped me to just be more at ease, and not like be so forceful in my pursuits to like make something happen when I want it to happen. And continuing with that topic on being obedient, right? Like to the Lord's instruction, he's calling us, like he's inviting us in the space to just trust him more, to depend on him more, to be okay with giving our yes, even when we don't understand it, with, like our human minds and our human like hearts, right? Like just giving him our yes and watching, depending, and surrendering to what he is going to do. And I know that I'm so guilty of just like, if I can't see it, I'm like, nah, like I tried everything. I don't understand how that's gonna work. But like, can you imagine if they responded like that? Like I would be reading this like, they're crazy. But I don't think about that about myself when I do it. And so it feels like a risk. It feels like a risk. But the interesting thing is, like, we could take risks and like continue to like do the same things that we're literally like pulling ourselves through the mud to do, or we could take a risk on Jesus and just trust him and just surrender it to him and to depend on him, and it's really like, what are you gonna choose? And I'm working on, like I said, giving my yes to God even when I don't understand it. But if I feel like he is instructing me to do something, like, just do it. Just do it. A big thing for me is like, I feel like I'm always playing for clarity, because I want God to make it clear. Like, I gotta know what's going on. But the clarity comes after the obedience. And that's something he's really, really been speaking to me about, but actually showing me as well. It's like he needs you to take that first step. He needs you to take that action. He needs you to be obedient to the call or whatever it is, he's instructing you to do. And then the picture will start making sense. And we see that all throughout the Bible, like even looking at Abraham's story, like, he's going to give you where the instruction to go, but he's not going to give you the full clear map. And I think that's like the hardest thing about my like faith journey, is like, prior to being in Christ, I did everything on my own. Like, I depended on myself, and I trusted in myself, and I depend on myself. I believe in me. But when you become a child of God and you are a Christian, all of that gets flipped upside down. Like, your strength, it don't matter. It doesn't compare to what God can do and will do and wanting to do in your life. And you can't use your understanding as support anymore. You can't use your strength as support anymore. Like, there has to be a decision within you, within me, that we have to make to say, okay, like, my stability was in myself and things that I can see. But now I have to shift that mindset and trust in Jesus that he's got me, like that I'm not doing this alone and I'm not gonna fail because I have someone greater than even me by my side, and I think when we're just in life, that's very hard to sit and remember. It's very hard to kind of get yourself out of that mindset when you're like, yo, like this is so frustrating and I'm so like I'm at like the end of it. But that's the beauty of it though. Like Jesus, he wants access to those spaces in our lives. And like even when you look at the story, like he got on Peter's boat. Peter, that was his job, okay? Like he was a fisherman. That was his security. That was his livelihood. That was his comfort. And Jesus gained access to that. Jesus came into that place where pretty much that's all Peter knew, right? Like that was his identity, being a fisherman. And Jesus, he wanted access to that so that he could do miracles, right? And so what areas of our lives is the Lord inviting us to like give him access to so that he can help us like redeem or like change the narrative in that areas of our lives. And like for me, that's like my career. I put a lot of I attached so much to like what I thought my life was gonna be career wise. Like even now, I did not use my college degree at all, and I'm working as a massage therapist. But even now, like that's becoming my identity, and the Lord is speaking to me about that. Like, no, no. And I think we just like want to attach ourselves to things so much. But I'm so grateful that the Lord just exposes our own hearts to ourselves, right? So that we can be sanctified in that area and be free, right? Of like all of these attachments that we have made that really are dragging us down. The miracle happened after the obedience. And sometimes like that breakthrough that we're looking for is on the opposite side. It's on the other side of being obedient. And that was another layer of the story that I was like, whoa, like, if they wasn't obedient to that, they would have blocked their blessing. They would have never received the abundance. If they were like, nah, man, we've been doing this all night. We're not going back out there. Like, we're done. And it's like, how many areas of the life do we just like give up? And we're just like, no, like I'm over it. Like you lose hope, you feel defeated, and you're not even open to like hearing what God may be telling you to do, and you shut him out. And I'm guilty of that too. And I believe some of us are not even aware that we're doing it because the emotions of it, the heaviness of it is just too much. It's just too much. And if this is speaking to you, like that's definitely something to take to God and to pray to him about, right? Like if there's something that you're trying to speak to me about, but I've just completely blocked you out, like reveal that to me, soften my heart so that I can hear you in that area. And going into my next point, like when the story is talking about like they went out and they got mad fish, like the nets were tearing, the boats were sinking. I'm like, oh snap, like I want some of that abundance too. Like what I gotta do, I just thought that was so fascinating. And they were so amazed. Like, even me, like, I can't imagine how everybody must have felt seeing that, like, in person, because even me reading it, I'm amazed. Like, I'm in awe. I'm like, that's crazy. So many fish that the boat is sinking. Like, that's a lot. But the beautiful part about the story was that's not even like the main point. It like gets better. It gets better. So they see all the fish, and then Peter is like, he says, he falls to his knees and he says, "Oh Lord, please leave me. I'm such a sinful man." And then Jesus replied and he said, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you'll be fishing for people." And I was like, I love that. I'm like, I see what you did there, Jesus. I see what you did there. And then it goes on to say that, and as soon as they landed, they left everything and followed Jesus. And that's very important. So my next point is that God is more interested in who he's transforming you into than your circumstances. The story was never about the fish. Like, God, like Jesus did that because he's Jesus and he can and he loves us. And, you know, he shows us miracles all the time. But that's not really the point. That's not the point. Is it amazing? Absolutely. Like, it's more than amazing that, like, the abundance of fish that they caught, right? But in that moment, Peter, the more important thing was, like, yes, he got fish, but he really found Jesus. Like, Jesus was the one that he gained in that moment, right? And so that was an identity shift right there. Peter received a new calling. He received a new identity and an encounter with Jesus that changed him. And so in an area that he was struggling in and he was striving in, being a fisherman, Jesus completely just changed that, right? And he redeemed it. That's the whole point. Everything that Peter learned being a fisherman is now going to be used for God's kingdom and his people. Instead of fishing for fish, now he's going out there and he's fishing for souls. Like, I'm like, that is so good. Like, something in that just really clicks with me. And even if I look back into my experience where I feel like that was an empty season, I didn't really gain anything from my career, there are so many things throughout, you know, my journey for the last, like, going on almost 10 years since I've been out of college. That God is now using, but for his kingdom. I'm not using it for, you know, for anything that had to do with my degree, but now I'm using it to speak to his people. You know, I'm using it to speak the gospel, you know? And that was like a really deep, like, personal revelation to me. And at the end of the sentence, it says, as soon as they landed, they left everything and followed Jesus. And that was profound because, mind you, the boats were full. These were not empty boats anymore. And they left all of that. That would have been the perfect opportunity for them to say, no. We got all these fish. Like, we about to run it up. We about to get money. Like, we rich. Mind you, this was their security. This is how they made money. This was their livelihood. right? Like, this technically was the goal from the beginning. Like, they didn't know that Jesus was going to show up on the scene, right? That would have been the perfect opportunity for them to just be like, oh no, Jesus, thank you very much, like, let me shake your hand, but like, we gotta go. And the fact that they let it all go, they surrendered it, like, that was really the test. That was really the test. And they didn't look back. They walked away from everything that they knew. They walked away from that old identity, and they became disciples. They became followers of Christ. Like, that was their new life. That was their new life in Christ. That to me is just such a great example that, like, God wastes nothing. Everything that Peter learned as a fisherman, he's going to be able to use and translate, and now be a disciple for Christ, and like, and fish for people, literally, how Jesus said. And so your painful experiences, like your waiting seasons, your delayed dreams, anything that you have just been praying for and you feel like you're not getting an answer, like, just know that Jesus, God, he's near. He is near. He's near. And he is able to work a miracle in that area of your life. He 100% can. And this really shows us that like, even in empty seasons, he's still preparing us for more. He's still willing and able to give us more, just like he did on the boat for Simon Peter. And it just really talks about the essence of discipleship as well. Like, we put our identity in so many things, like so many things that we want to achieve. But at the end of the day, like, if we are true Christians, like, our call, our identity is to be disciples. It's to disciple, and it is to go out to preach the gospel and to tell people about Jesus. I hope that this really encourage you if you're in a season where you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling abandoned, if you're feeling forgotten, or you're angry, or you're frustrated, whatever it may be, to know that, like, God is still with you. He's still preparing you, and he's asking, for access in that area of your heart and in your life. And to just really think about, where is it that you feel like you've given up? And just invite him into that space. And just know that he may be teaching you how to trust him, how to depend on him. And he's developing your character. He cares more about the transformation happening within you than your external circumstances. The journal prompt that I have written out here is, what empty nets in my life have I been viewing as failure that God may actually be using as preparation? That's so good. I need to go and sit and journal. But friend, I hope that this episode encouraged you. My camera is literally about to die in 1 minute, so I gotta wrap this up. But just thank you so much for listening. I hope this blessed you. I hope this encouraged you. And until next time, I will see you later. Bye.